Okay, welcome to Tip TV. Obviously, we are here at the Master Investor Show, and joining us now is Jim Mellon. Jim, thanks for coming on.
My great pleasure.
I listened to your speech earlier on the main stage, and you were talking a lot about longevity in terms of we're going to be living, you see it, longer, so 20, 30.
You probably longer than me.
Well, I don't know, I'm not sure about that, the way I'm going. But in terms of one thing that really interests me is you spoke about the opportunities there, and you see real potential in that we will be living for significantly long periods of time. What's the impact, do you think that's going to be on the way we govern, the way we're talking about now the problems with social care, the problem of dealing with older people. Do you think this is going to be something which is going to have a revolutionary impact on the way governments work and governments provide for their citizens?
Yes, I think you're right, because there are two things here. The first is we all live longer, but if we live elderly lives where you're sitting dribbling in a chair in a nursing home, that's not much of a life. So we've got to transform elderliness, which is the diseases of old age, into welderliness, where you actually have a health span, as they call it in America, that's much longer and contiguous with your lifespan. So in the last year you might go downhill, but not in the last 10, 20, 30 years, because the burden will be unsupportable. If people have still got Alzheimer's and cardiac disease and diabetes and all those things, and they're living another 30 years, the burden on the state will be unsupportable, and no one's going to pay for it. No one's going to be able to pay for it. So in combination with living longer, we also need to make people's lives acceptable until the point they die. And that's going to be the big trick.
And so just to confirm, when you say we're going to be living this period longer, that's going to include living longer without these kind of conditions like Alzheimer's, like dementia, or is it just people are going to be living longer with them and we're going to have the burden of them?
I think that we're going to see those conditions eliminated or turned into chronic conditions which are a bit like arthritis, where you can live with it and it's not going to, the drugs are pretty good at keeping it suppressed and so forth. And so number one is cancer. All right. Cancer is the second biggest cause of death in the world. What do you think the number one is?
I don't have no idea.
You weren't listening to the presentation. It's cardiovascular disease. And people are still dying more from heart disease than they are from cancer. But cancer is almost totally addressable now. And then the third is neurodegenerative disease, and diabetes is the fourth, both of which are metabolic diseases, all right? So if we can address those, which basically account for 65% of all deaths in the world, and put them into a sort of box where they may come back and kill you, but for 10 or 20 or 30 years you're not going to be suffering from them, then that is going to be a huge industry in itself. The next industry are those things I talked about on the stage, which are therapies that exist now or in development, which will add another 15 years to life. So overall, 30 years. Now, you may say, how is that possible? But I can tell you that people in 1900 didn't think that their life expectancy was going to go from 41 to 83 in a century. They didn't believe that would happen, but it did. So we have to have that vision. If we have that vision, we can make tons of money out of it.
And in terms of just looking at the government as well, we have a big concern about NHS in the UK, social care. How we're going to fund this? It's a big issue, and a lot of people are wanting a long-term solution to the problems we're facing right now. But so, am I right in thinking that on your assumption, problems associated which we have now in terms of what we predict is going to be the burden we're going to be having as generations get older, you don't see it as such a problem because in the future it's not going to be?
I don't. And the reason is that if you look at the NHS budget, I'll ask you a question. What percentage of it do you think goes to buying drugs?
A substantial amount. I'll go for 20%. You're hitting me with figures.
10%.
10%.
Right. Now, drugs are a displacement factor for the most expensive part of the NHS, which is hospitalisation.
Yeah.
All right. So, if we can keep people out of hospital by using drugs as displacement, then you can reduce the overall burden of NHS spending. And outside of the NHS is social care spending, which is getting bigger and bigger and bigger as people go into the nursing homes and they dribble away in the last 3 or 4 years in their plastic chairs and have a horrible life. And again, if that can be reduced, and both of those are possible, by the way, then you reduce the overall burden, but you improve the science and you improve everyone's lives, basically. And I think that's where we're at.
Let's just move very, very quickly on to Brexit, because obviously you were talking about looking into the ball and predicting the future. In terms of Europe, in terms of what is going to be happening in Europe in the coming year, we've got a couple of Germany, France elections, we've had the Dutch election, which didn't go as cataclysmic as some people were thinking it could. What do you see happening to the European Union going into these negotiations with the UK?
Well, I think the negotiations with the UK will end up being pragmatic, because the UK is 17% of the European Union's GDP, so it's almost a fifth, second only to Germany, which is at 20%, way ahead of France, Italy and Spain. And they sell more to us than we sell to them by a country mile, basically. And so they will need the UK to still be an important customer for them, and there's all this talk of punishment and exit bills and so forth is rubbish. I don't think the UK is the big issue. I think the issue is who else is going to leave the European Union, because although they would like to make the UK an example of why you shouldn't leave the European Union, it may well be an example of why you should, because the UK is prospering. It's doing better than any other country in Europe as far as I can see. And so it may be that other countries, those who are very disadvantaged by the European Union, like Greece and Portugal and Italy, may just decide to leave, or at least leave the euro. And that other strong ones may say, well, the UK model is not a bad model, and maybe we should do that as well. So what I hope is that the euro implodes, which I think it will, and that we all reform into some association of the type that we originally joined, which is a free trading association based on peace and mutual prosperity and integration, but doesn't consist of 28 members with incomes that range from $10,000 a year to $100,000 a year per head, but is like the smaller group that was the original formation of the European Union. And I think that would be a good thing, not a bad thing.
And in terms of this talk of a free trade deal, we have a 2-year negotiation period, obviously, when there is hope that there will be some kind of deal at the end of it, or we fall off a cliff into WHO rules. Do you see that even if we did fall over, if we walked away with no deal as opposed to a bad deal, is that a cataclysmic thing for the UK?
Well, in some ways I think it's better, because if we go into WTO rules, you're looking at a 4% average tariff, which is irrelevant really for us, because the elasticity of our exports is not that sensitive to a 4% tariff or not. The only worry is that, of course, then you have a congestion issue at ports and all that sort of stuff, but they'll work that one out. Remember, they sell much more to us. Germans, car companies, sell 1/5 of all their output to the United Kingdom. Do you think they're going to put up with the... And by the way, if they lose that 1/5, they go bust, because that's the difference between profit and loss. There are plenty of other examples of that. So I think I think the big problem is that the European Union itself is facing very, very, very big difficulties, and in a way it's a shame that Brexit's happening at the moment, because it's just almost putting a nail into their coffin. But we are not the cause of their difficulties. They are their own fundamental cause of their own difficulties by stupidly overexpanding and also imposing the euro common currency. And if they hadn't done that, we'd still be in, basically. And also, if they'd given Cameron something more than those stupid concessions, supposedly, that they gave him, I think he would have won the referendum.
I mean, that was obviously with Angela Merkel, who was the
well, she gave us nothing, really.
Is she going to still be around, do you think, end of this year?
I say it's 50-50.
What about France?
France, Aaron Banks is saying that she's got a good chance. My view is that she's a 10% chance. But then, with her or without her, with Macron, with her, whatever, it's the same in France. They're going down a big, long hole, and they don't seem to be doing anything to get out of it.
Jim Mellon, thanks very much for coming along to the Tip TV studios.